Am I a voice actor? I was a theatre actor in a previous life before COVID shut all the theatres down. So if anyone is new to the stream, I've always wanted to be a performer since I was a little kid. That's all I've ever wanted to do. I loved acting, I loved film, I loved theatre, I loved TV, I love all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to be an actor. So I went to university, I studied acting, I tried as hard as I could, I taught acting for a little bit, I was doing relatively well, I was making a living off it, and then COVID shut all the theatres down. Now what would happen is after I would come home from a day of learning scripts or a day of acting or whatever I was doing, I would play video games, MMORPGs. I loved them so much. But I realized that the games I was playing, they needed guides. I needed to know how to kill this boss, how to kill that boss, how to do all that kind of stuff. So I started making guides on MMORPGs specifically. A guide on how to play RuneScape, how to play Tera, that kind of stuff. And the guides did okay. I was using my skills as a teacher, I was using my very basic skills as a video editor and a script writer to just make what I thought were easy to follow guides for, basic simple stuff. I wasn't going too over the top, just, the majority of players can follow. And then one day when I was making these guides, I kept seeing these banner adverts on the side of my screen. Banner adverts for a game called League of Angels, and it looked awful. It was one of those horrible Ebony style ads. It just looked dire. And I thought, it advertises itself as an MMORPG, but that has got to be the worst MMO I've ever seen. So I made a video called Worst MMO Ever. And it was about reviewing League of Angels, and it did relatively well. It was a good video. And from then on, I just made more and more and more. Now, because COVID had shut the theatres down at that point, and because teaching in schools, it's a steady paycheck, but it's not exactly enough, or it's not enough free time to allow you to explore a career in theatre as well. I thought, hey, when I make enough money off YouTube and Twitch, I very much need to just switch over and focus on that full time, because this gives me not only the joy of being able to play video games, which have been my hobby for years, but also it gives me the ability to use the skills that I've got, acting, talking, performing, writing, reading, analysing, in a more consistent way. And now I am, as you said in the chat, now I am acting like someone who knows how to play Path of Exile, which I think is going okay. If I didn't explain to you that I have no idea what I'm doing, some of you might think that I know what I'm doing. I'm acting like a guy who understands how to play this game. I'm not. I'm a guy who understands how to summon zombies and minions, and they know how to play this game. Like, the panic button is when I press R and Big Golden Boy comes to save me. Soon as Big Golden Boy comes out, you guys know I'm in trouble. Josh is the most normal theatre kid I've ever seen. You ain't seen nothing yet, to coin a phrase. Just hang around, I'm very weird. I'm wearing a Yu-Gi-Oh jumper right now. You know what I really like? This is something I really like. I think that people will hate. A lot of people, especially boomers, I don't like the generational divide too much, but I think it is apt for the discussion. This is more of a generalization, but unfortunately I've noticed it in my time on this earth be more true. The older generation tends to be more emotionally repressed and fall into the trappings of toxic masculinity far more. I believe that on average, when I've met older people, the ability to discuss how they feel, how they think, what's brought them to a conclusion, or admit that they were wrong, it's harder to get through those barriers. People like to, rip on Gen Z all the time. Oh my god, Gen Z this, Gen Z that. You know what Gen Z are really, really bloody good at? Talking about how they feel and accepting others who feel different. I'll give them that. I'll give the kids that, man. I mean, I was a teacher for a long time. I'll tell you what, you can talk about how kids have got no attention span. You can talk about how kids these days are less respectful. Kids these days are actually a lot more respectful of their peers being different to them and not feeling the need or the desire to prove how much better or worse they are than anyone else. That is one thing that I think is very, very true, that I've noticed a lot. I'm very proud. I mean, I like to think my teaching helped a bit, and the boss is dead. Oh, so am I, nearly. I've got to actually focus on this boss for a second, so just give me a moment. Let's just see how fast... Okay, and deleted. That is how quick the bosses go down with this one. But no, I very much do... I very much do believe that kids these days are actually very good at discussing their thoughts, their feelings, their opinions, accepting people that don't think or feel or have the same opinion to them. I like that. It's reassuring as a parent of neurodivergent kids, without a doubt. What is my opinion on big-ass spiders in fantasy? Personally, absolutely no problem with it. I think it's really cool. I'm not a fan of spiders in real life. I don't have arachnophobia. I'm just not a big fan of them. Would it be great if you can have sliders to turn off phobias? This is where the millennial in me comes out. And again, I'm going to say something that people might find controversial, but it's important. 10% reduced damage or cannot be stunned? I'll go with reduced damage over time. That might be better. Talking about spiders and stuff, and things with warnings, filters, caution, this game contains this. Do you think that all games that contain potentially triggering things should be required to have a version that does not have that thing? Or do you think they should have that thing but just warn you that you might experience it? Because personally, I very much believe that controlled and safe exposure to the thing that you are scared of, with a decent enough safety net around you and a compassionate and understanding team of people to help you get through it, is important. Because you're not actually doing anyone any favors by completely avoiding the scary thing. It doesn't help anyone to effectively go through life never taking on the things that scare you. It's very important that if something is scary to you, if something is affecting to you, you figure out a way to deal with it. And I'm not saying chuck someone in the deep end and say, you know, hey, this is going to suck, get used to it, because that's not the most effective way of dealing with that. But people often say to me, oh, that's heartless. I don't want anyone to be exposed to something that they're uncomfortable with, or force them to go through a life experience that is going to be traumatic for them. But I would very much like people to have the skills needed to actually deal with those situations when they happen. I mean, there's a famous parable that I tend to refer back to quite a lot whenever I'm talking about this with someone. And this matters to me. This stream, by the way, this stream goes up and down a lot. We'll talk about serious topics, then we'll talk about dumb topics. Then it'll be really exciting, then it'll be really boring. And we go up and down. We're in the serious moment right now. But no, incremental exposure is, as someone in the chat pointed out rightly, a method in therapy, which is very important. I'm going to go and pick up whatever dropped over here, because some important stuff dropped. When do we talk about tacos? That's after this. Don't worry. That's after this. But I very much think that, and this is the parable of a village being built at the foot of a dam. And every now and again, the dam bursts and the village gets flooded. And every year, the village will spend so much time, so much energy, so much effort on reinforcing the dam, reinforcing the buildings, telling people it won't happen, saying, don't worry, don't look at the dam, it's okay, you don't need to worry about it, we'll sort it all out when it happens, don't worry about it. But it will happen, it will flood eventually, guaranteed, it will. Would they be better spending the time learning to swim? I mean, you could move the village, that's fine, but would it be better learning and understanding that, yes, this dangerous, damaging thing is terrifying, it is scary, and it is, without a doubt, eventually going to happen. So instead of putting all of our energy and all of our effort into delaying the inevitable, it's very important that we learn the skills to deal with the situation when it happens. So I very much think that, I'm not saying that obviously, you know, don't move the village, don't sort that. The parable, the idea behind the parable is there is a limited amount of energy and effort that you should put into attempting to prevent something. And then there is an amount that you should put into gaining the tools, gaining the experience, gaining the ability to deal with the thing when it inevitably happens. So I am not a big fan of snakes. Don't like snakes whatsoever. Sorry, if you like snakes, great. I'm not a huge fan of them. If I ever saw a snake in real life, or I was approached by a snake, if a snake walked up to me and said, "Hey Josh," first of all, I'd think I was in a Disney film, but then I would feel comfortable kind of knowing what to do. I'd be okay saying, right, I'm not a fan of this, I'm just going to leave. I'm just going to walk off. But this is the question. Chase puts out a good point there. Why should it be on game developers to be responsible for that? If a game wants to have a big-ass spider in it, the game can have a big-ass spider in it. I think that there is a level of courtesy that comes with the developers saying, hey, just so you know, before you play this, there's a big-ass spider in it. Okay, cool. That way, people that can't deal with big-ass spiders have the choice about whether they want to be exposed to it or not. Should the game developer also have a version of the game that doesn't have a big-ass spider in it? Well, if they do, it's no longer the same vision of the game. It's no longer the same idea the game developers have. It's also effectively saying to that person, hey, I know you're scared of spiders, so instead of ever having to deal with that, we are just going to make it so you don't have to deal with that. And I think this is what it comes down to. And again, speaking from a teaching point of view, the biggest issue that I see, and this is both with the older generation and the younger generation, is the inability to deal with scary, damaging, dangerous issues and the desire that they just get removed before you ever have to deal with them. The biggest one that I see is people don't know how to deal with losing or being wrong. So many people have absolutely no clue how to deal with being wrong. And it's not like being wrong is the worst thing in the world. You can point out someone's wrong. Have you ever pointed out someone's wrong and had that person then be annoyed at you? Not annoyed at themselves because they were wrong. Not, oh, thank you for telling me the correct answer, now I know. But legitimately annoyed at you for pointing out how they were incorrect. And they often say it's being disrespectful. To the point that, you know, it's disrespectful to point out how somebody is wrong. Happens all the time. Beat for beat, man. Isn't that just arrogance? There's a level of arrogance to it, without a doubt. There is a level of arrogance to it, but it's very, very difficult to find. And again, this is about finding those coping mechanisms. If you put forward a thought and somebody else comes forward and explains that your thought is wrong, it actually does. It requires a coping mechanism for you to say, oh, okay, I was wrong. That's a coping mechanism to do that. That's a skill needed. Because if you don't have that, if you don't have the ability to process your own incorrect opinions, that's when you start to get people who are defensive, not of the opinion being correct, but of them never being challenged. Yeah. That's just one of the ways that I point out for it. These difficult things and scary things will exist forever. I think we need to give people the ability to learn coping techniques to deal with those problems as and when they happen. I'm not saying throw people into dangerous, damaging situations and, you know, chuck someone in the deep end of a pool and say swim. No, do go through the process of learning to swim with them. But if someone's terrified of something, help them become less terrified of it, because I think in general we are scared of what we do not understand. That seems to be one of the biggest things. Like the old saying, travel is the antithesis of bigotry. If you are forced to engage with people that are different to you, often if you're forced to engage with different cultures, it's very difficult for hatred to force itself to be maintained through that. It's very difficult to continue to hate something or to be scared of it if you understand it. I mean, if you hate something for legitimate reasons because you fully understand it, then great. There's an old psychological parable called, I think it's called Chesterton's Fence. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but Chesterton's Fence is the idea that if you see a fence in the middle of a field and you don't know what that fence is for, don't tear it down. Only tear it down when you absolutely understand what it's for and you know that tearing it down will not have any negative consequences. Because some people say to me, I've got no idea what that's doing. Get rid of it. I'm like, okay, if you have no idea what it's doing, let's not get rid of it. Let's wait till you know exactly what it's doing or not doing, and then get rid of it based on when you can guarantee that getting rid of it won't change anything. Because like you said in the chat, that fence might be keeping out the giant spiders. That's a great way of putting it, Job, actually. Avoiding what you don't understand never leads to growth. Facing what you don't understand and learning and changing as a human is one of my favorite sayings. It is a painful process, but it is not destructive. Chesterton's Fence is about programming as well. So, Elandra, amazing advice to programmers. People say, I don't know what this line of code is doing, therefore I'm going to remove it. Okay, so if you don't know what that line of code is doing, don't touch it. Because I guarantee it's doing something, and the moment you take it away is when everything will break. You need to understand what it's doing before you get rid of it.